Not only does he place the desire in your heart, he'll give you the grace and the mercy that you need in order to fulfill the same, but you will have to work for it. It's not going to come sailing in, rolling in on the wheels of inevitability. No. You have to roll up your sleeves. You've got to be willing to dirty your hands. You've got to be able to do what other people is not willing to do in order for you to get where other people will never get. Another writer says, I know you've heard it 1,000 times before, he says, but it is true. Hard work pays off. If you want to be good, you have to practice and practice and practice. If you don't love something, don't do it. But if you're going to be the best at what you have purpose in your heart, you want to be the best at, you got to work harder than everybody else. You got to push yourself. You got to be smarter than everybody else. You got to be willing and eager to pay the price in order for you to become successful, fruitful, productive, and be the best at what God has called you to be. And the quote. Another writer says, all growth depends on activity. You cannot grow in life if you are stagnant. You cannot grow either spiritually or mentally or emotionally, relationships that Robert spoke about, or physically or financially if you are stagnant. If you are going to grow as an individual, you've got to make a decision to become an active and a meaningful participant in the affairs of life. You got to read. You got to study. You got to watch the news. You got to sit with your books. You got to get up early in the morning. You got to go to bed late at night. You got to push yourself. You got to propel yourself. You got to link up with people that's going in the same direction that you desire to go. You cannot afford to interact and engage with E and F level people if your dream and your goal is an A level goal. You got to find A-level people, and you got to allow them to speak into your life. That's the relationships that Robert spoke about. You got to find these type of people and say, I'm willing to pay the price, willing to embrace the disciplines, the philosophy, the ethos, and the ethic of hard work in order for me to get where I'm supposed to be. If you deal with an E-level person and you want A-level results, you'll never get A-level results. You got to find yourself an A-level person, and you got to hook yourself, link yourself up to that A-level person, and you got to allow that person to stretch you and to pull you and to encourage you. Sometimes the relationship, as Robert said, is going to be a bit uncomfortable. Why? Because you've got to have honest and open and transparent dialogue. You might hear things that you're not comfortable with, things that you don't want to hear, as they pull you and as they stretch you and as they lift you up from one level to another level. But in order for you to become the best at doing what God has called you to do, you got to tap in, you got to suck it up, you got to roll up your sleeves, you got to change your attitude and say, I got to do what I got to do in order for me to get where I want to be. Hard work has never killed anybody. Oh my goodness. Can I continue? Yes. When somebody asks one of the great inventors to describe genius, he says it's 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. It's 1% inspiration. The soul, the seed of consciousness, the ability to dream and to vision. to visualize. I'm going to get to that in a minute, and I'll close with that. That's where work starts. It does not start in the physical realm. All of the great achievers of the world, if they have to talk to us about their journey, you will discover that their journey started in the realm of the soul, what we call the seat of consciousness. That's where all work starts. So if you want to be a genius, you got to have both. You got to have creativity and you got to have physicality. You cannot be successful and be the best at doing what you designed to do, what God has called you and has designed you to do, unless you have both commodities. You need creativity and you need physicality. In fact, physicality should emanate and pull and be the substratum upon which all activity, physical activity takes place, should be creativity. That should be the basis. That should be the foundation that supports physicality. It does not start with physicality because why? It has its pros and its cons. When you have creativity, and I'll show you in a minute, if you have creativity and physicality, it becomes a sustainable and a successful process. Because it starts from the inside out and not from the outside in. A lot of people are trying to get this thing from the outside in, and that's the reason why they run around. That's the reason why they lack the discipline. That's the reason why they're not fulfilled. That's the reason why they're not successful and content with what they're doing. Why? Because they only have the one component, and that is the physical dynamic or the physical dimension of this thing. When God starts, and I'll show you now, when God starts with the process of work, He starts with creativity first. Oh my Jesus. Are we in varsity? Am I too deep for you? Genius is 1% inspiration, it's 90% perspiration. Accordingly, a genius is often merely a talented person who has done all of his or her homework. A genius is a talented person who has merely done all of his or her homework. End of quote. The same writer says, there is no substitute for hard work. Now let me deal with this thing of God quickly and we'll pray. There's two very important words, as I said to you in the book of Genesis. You read it, you read it, you read it, but they don't stand out to you, they don't mean anything to you. Why? Because why? You have not looked at the etymological meaning of those words. The original intent. What does these words mean? Let me break them down. In the beginning, the first thing that God does, He creates. Every successful entrepreneur, whether it be in banking, whether it be in commerce, whether it be in building, whether it be in electronics, whether it be in mining, it doesn't matter which sector you want to put onto the table as a case study. The first thing that the first responsibility that the person has towards the process is she has to be creative. The architect has to go onto a board. No, before he gets to the board, he has to think. Now this is what he does. He walks. He walks for days, sometimes for months, sometimes for a year, sometimes for 2. He walks. Conceptually, something is happening in what we call the seat of consciousness. He's creating the house. He's creating the 50-story building. Saul Kirsner does not just get up and say, well, you know what, I'm going to go and build me myself a no. He's got to walk around. He's got to conceptualize. He's got to visualize. He's got to dream. He's got to paint a picture. He's got to draw lines. He's got to deal with interior design, architectural design. He's got to deal with all of the dynamics that necessitates the successful outcome of the picture. He's got to deal with that. That's called a creative process. That's what everybody does. Whether you are going to build a road, whether you're going to build this building, whether you're going to build the Taj Mahal, whether you're going to build one of these fancy buildings out in Sandton City, it doesn't matter what you want to do. The first process is the creative process. You've got to be creative. You got to think. You got to shut yourself off from the rest of the world. You cannot allow negativity to influence your creativity. You've got to be creative. You got to shut yourself off. You got to listen to your heart. You got to listen to your voice. You got to listen to the Spirit of God that will speak on the inside of your being, that will give you a plan, a purpose, a design, and the information that is necessary in order for you to start with the journey.